space programs is cutting edge these days?
The private space programs are not all cutting edge. A lot of them are working off of extant, off-the-shelf stuff, right, and working out how to teach themselves what's already known, right, and where to buy stuff. Yeah. There's a lot of research on taking stuff off the shelf, figuring out how to make it work, and then going, how can we improve it? Right? There's kind of a staging. Right. First, you have to get different than that. First, you have to master what's already there.
Right.
And then you start going, okay, I've got an idea to improve a thing. Right. There's, for instance, a company out of Australia that launches a fairly small rocket that will put CubeSats and stuff in orbit for you.
Is that not Brandon stuff?
No, that's different. That's a different guy.
Brandon in Australia.
The Virgin Galactic guy, he's out of Britain.
Is he? All right.
Right. That's not to say that he might have anything going anywhere. If
right,
you've got the money and the equipment, whatever. Right. But what I was talking about is an example to lead back to your question about, is everything cutting edge in space for private companies? And that's no. There's a lot of cutting edge stuff going on through academia, which is really heavily tied into the European Space Agency, the Japanese Space Agency, I forget what it's called, and NASA, because NASA does a lot of academic funding.
They sure do.
Right? And one of the things that these groups are going after is they want to be able to put telescopes in space. Big, really sensitive, really long-lasting, serviceable telescopes.
So if they put it out there, it's better than Los Alamos, because
if you look at what happened with the Hubble telescope,
right?
The Hubble telescope had a major fiasco where they forgot to calculate something about how to grind the mirror.
The mirror, yeah, so something about the mirror.
They got the mirror slightly wrong,
right,
but they figured out how to, do cataract surgery on this thing,
right,
so to speak,
right,
and a couple of shuttle launches later, and some really hairy, out on the edge of a robotic arm with your feet strapped to the arm.
Yep.
Now, mind you, this is at the time when papers are coming out in NASA about orbital debris and how they can't even see stuff that's 10 centimeters or smaller, that's moving 11,000 miles an hour, and the space shuttle's window got hit by a paint fleck that probably came from some missile somewhere a long time ago, and it cracked a quartz glass window that was this thick,
right,
and this freaking big around. All right?
They cracked it. Hubble.
That scared the living bejeebus out of them, right? So these spacewalks, they are a lot ballsier than they look.
Right.
They look like, okay, they're chilling, they're floaty, and they're always losing shit.
Almost like
in the camera shots, shots of spacewalks, I've seen a washer floating by, right? That is deadly.
Right.
It's deadly to satellites. It's deadly to humans. Anything you do in space with man-made anything is threatened by something like that, because it's moving relative speed. It's moving the same speed as the shuttle at that moment when it drifts away from the shuttle.
So it's 11,000 miles an hour just for that
cannot see that thing.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, something that small
is deadly
at that speed.
It's faster than a bullet.
Right.
It's way faster than a bullet.
Right.
And these anything from paint flecks to washers to whole satellites that are dead and can't navigate. Space junk. It's a huge issue. I think 4 minutes on that. And so when they do spacewalks, it really is a big deal.
Right.
I've figured out ways that I'm convinced we could clean up all of the orbital debris.
Really?
Of all sizes down to freaking sand grains.
A pretty sound engineering idea?
Sure.
Is it simple? Is it simple enough to explain?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But I'm going to hold off on that for now because...
So the next segment?
The thing is that how and why and where a given idea is revealed into the noosphere.
Not patented yet?
It affects whether that gets to be used in a morally appropriate way or not.
No said.
Okay, and
could be weaponized. Am I catching the right moral equivalent here?
I'm not going to venture anything because there's too much to tell, and you won't have patience with me on that. But here's the thing that one thing that I think is really key to understanding how we as humans can choose the future that we get out of space. Space is called space because there's lots of space in that place.
And no sound. Interesting
when
segue.
you think about how big an open space is and how much resources is out there, that shapes the logistics of how to do things in there.
Absolutely.
When you look at the size of the International Space Station, it's dinky. It's inky dinky teeny weeny compared to what can be done in space. And a lot of that has to do...
Yeah, give me a size just a little bit. It's smaller than the Nimitz, but bigger than a regular battleship? I mean, how big is
the International Space Station is compared to football fields in size.
Okay.
So for us humans here on Earth, an individual human, if the whole thing was put together and sitting in a football field, it would have to be held up with all kinds of sticks because it's not designed to be under gravity. But it would seem kind of big, until you start to grasp the scale of space, and certain factors about how you really can do things in space that has not been represented in prior art.
As of yet.
None of the stuff that's in my head I have seen since I have studied this stuff, sought it out since I was like 8. Right? And you know, these talking heads on the Zenith console TV with the 2 different channel knobs, even before the remote, told me space was important. We did it in '69, and guess where my birthday is?
Right around then?
I was born in January, before we got to the moon. My mom was in contracts law class in the month we got to the moon.
You told me that before.
Okay? And so that made an impression. I spent my whole life looking for everything. And all the space stations designs that I've seen in science fiction, in actual designs that were proposed, the Von Braun space station, all of that stuff is woefully inadequate compared to what I've imagined. And I know that's a bold statement. Okay, we're at 8 minutes.